My name is Stephanie Bullock and I'm one of the founding directors of Kosloff Architecture. So Kolsoff Architecture was co-founded by myself and Julian Kosloff almost 5 years ago now. We're coming up to our 5th year anniversary, and we really founded the practice wanting to focus primarily on public work, so education, cultural facilities, sporting facilities and so forth.
Since inception 5 years, it's been a tumultuous 5 years, growing a studio with the pandemic, taking up that first infancy, the toddler years of that.
Yeah, it's a great question actually, and I was reflecting on it because knowing we're coming up to our 5-year anniversary in August, I've realised that more than half of the life of the practice has been during a pandemic, which is slightly strange. But, I think it's interesting how, obviously that's created challenges, but also opportunity as well. So, I think that some of the responses to the pandemic in terms of a lot of investment in public infrastructure, we obviously do a lot of work in that space, and so, we've done a lot of work on education in particular that's come out of stimulus spending. But I think the other thing that I guess has been really positive about that process is that we always had an interest in providing flexible working conditions, and I think that the pandemic has really accelerated people's acceptance of that process.
What do you think makes a good studio in today's environment?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I think it probably depends on your perspective. But for us, I think it's about a place that provides people with meaning. I think that's really important in terms of studio culture, that people really believe in the work that they do, and that they genuinely, I guess, align with the values of the studio as well, whatever they might be.
When did you know it was the right time to start the studio or to partner up?
Sure. Look, there's never really a right time. Jules and I had worked together previously before. We had previously been directors at another practice. And I suppose, we had very aligned ideas about what a practice could be, and it really felt to us as though there was an opportunity to design a practice from the start that could deliver, I guess, the sort of value that we were interested in. We're very interested in impact, for example, so we knew we wanted to be a B corporation from the very start, and we really designed the studio around that idea and that idea of doing public work.
You mentioned that you've had this vision of great design from the practice sort of view. How does that vision manifest itself within the studio?
Yeah, well, I think one of our other core values apart from impact is collaboration, and that manifests in a number of ways. It's about how we design as a studio. There's not one designer, so it's very collaborative. Everybody in the studio is involved in design to some extent, but I think it's also about the idea of really working closely with your stakeholders. So we spend a lot of time and effort on engaging with our stakeholders and a really wide group of stakeholders, because we really believe that drives a great design. That if it's genuinely coming from the context of the project, but also what the end users want, and I think it's reflected in our work. Our projects don't look the same. There's not sort of a house style. If you have a look at our website, they're all very different, and that's because they're all responding to different contexts, and they're all responding to different groups of people who will use those buildings.
Over the last 5 years, you guys have obviously grown into more than just you and Jules.
Yes.
Have you maintained such a great team environment? Are you guys doing anything internally to maintain a great team culture besides flexible work environment, anything like that?
Yeah, well, it is very challenging when you grow very quickly, because your culture is constantly evolving. So we have been going through a constant and very rapid phase of growth with new people coming on board. And, culture's interesting because you can't really manufacture it. So, it starts obviously with the people that are already part of the culture. It's also about, getting the right people to join the team as well, because it does come from the people in the team. And I think it's also about an idea that, you can't sort of enforce a culture from the top down. It has to genuinely come from the people within it. And again, I think that comes back to shared values.
What are those values that you guys try make sure that your staff do maintain?
Yeah, sure. So impact is one of them, and that covers things like, being an ethical and sustainable corporation. We're certified as a B corporation. It's the reason we developed a reconciliation action plan. We're really passionate about reconciliation, and it sort of translates into a whole lot of things, including wanting to do work that benefits the public. The second one is collaboration, as I mentioned before, and it's about, the idea that the broader that collaboration is and the more meaningful it is, the better the outcome, and also the more enjoyable the process. And then I guess the third value we talk a lot about is aspiration. So we don't have, the good projects in the office and the sort of the, ones we don't really show people. Every single project in our office, regardless of the size of the scope, is considered to be something that has huge potential to get a great design outcome.
Yourself, how did you get into the industry?
Yeah, I didn't really have a traditional pathway into architecture, to be honest. I started out in banking, actually. I did accounting after I left school a very, very long time ago. I spent 10 years working in the financial services industry, and a lot of that was in project management, which was incredibly valuable. I learned how to manage quite large programs of work. And then after I had my first child, when I was 30, I made the decision to go back to university and I started my architectural degree.
Yeah.
Started working in third year and have been working as an architect ever since.
And how have you found that transition going from, a very corporate environment that's different to an architectural studio?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was challenging, and I think though one of the benefits of doing something like that, because it's really about your identity, right? So I had a whole identity as somebody in the corporate world. I decided that even though, and I had a fantastic career there, that I really wanted to do something that had meaning to me, and that's the reason why I decided to study architecture. I had to let go of the idea that, however successful I was in that previous life, that I may not be the same thing in architecture, and that's quite confronting, but I really believed that I would enjoy the work so much that it would be worth the risk, and frankly it was one of the best things I've ever done in my entire life. I think that the longer time goes on, the more I realise how valuable that experience was. There's a lot that I learnt from working in a really large corporate entity, and I think we've brought a lot of that to the way that we've designed the practice. So we talk a lot about, I guess even when there was just the two of us, really thinking about it as, a serious kind of enterprise. So, putting the time into systems and, very quickly going, we need to be ISO certified and we need a reconciliation action plan and we need to act as though, we're a larger entity than we really were.
Yeah.
It just really helped us to get where we are now.
No, it is. It's kind of like you make sure that you are in the size 13 shoes and you kind of grow into them.
But that's exactly right. Yeah. I think it's exactly right that, you sort of become what you aspire to be, and we'd always aspired to, be competing with, very established design firms that we really admired, and we have tried to act accordingly.
Thinking about aspirations, is there any studios or anyone that has inspired you or influenced yourself or the studio?
And Melbourne's such an extraordinary kind of design culture. I could list a whole range of sort of people, and I think that one of the things that is quite lovely is, I guess, the spirit of collaboration. It's very collaborative. Without naming any one studio in particular, we do a lot of work in the sort of design review space where we review other architects' drawings, and that's something that we've learned a lot from. So, it means that we're looking at the way that other architects operate. We also look really extensively at precedents, so we look at design precedents quite a lot, because, it's not about reinventing the wheel, it's about, standing on the shoulders of others and really learning from what other people are doing. And, we've also facilitated a lot of, I guess, design workshops where we brought other people together. We had a great one at the end of last year, which was deferred about 6 times because of COVID, where we, so as an example, we had Kennedy Nolan, we also had workshop architecture, and we were presenting recent schools work that we'd all done. And it's just fantastic, and I think that really exemplifies the culture of architecture in Melbourne.
And how have you been able to balance all that? You have a family, you've studied, and you're running a studio with very bustling studio, mind you. How do you find that balance in life?
Yeah, look, I think it does help a lot when you don't believe in the separation of work and life. So I think it's not about work-life balance. I think it's called a work-life integration model, I think is the technical term for it. So I don't have any particular boundaries between it. But, when you really love what you do, that's actually not a problem. And it also helps when your partner is in the same situation as well. So, from that perspective, if you really believe the work that you do is meaningful, you get that opportunity. But it's also, the kind of basic things about, thinking about your health, making sure that you're talking to people. I think, we have a particularly collaborative, supportive culture here, in that we work very hard. We don't work super long hours, but we work very hard when we're here. But we also try and enjoy it along the way. And all of that helps, in terms of, I guess, managing the stress.
5 years is coming up now. Where do you see yourself heading as a practice over the next 5 years?
Yeah, and look, we have spent a bit of time thinking about that. We took a couple of days with the leadership team to really think about that. And, I think for us, it's really about, consolidating what we've already done. We've achieved arguably a lot more than we thought that we did. We've got some great projects we've completed. We've got a lot under construction at the moment, which is very exciting. So there'll be a lot of new work coming out. And we also have just started on the design of quite a few very, very good projects as well. So, it almost feels as though, we're really sort of set up to the next 5 years. We feel as though we've got the right mix in terms of the team, a really good level of kind of experience, but also people who are earlier on in their careers. So it sort of feels as though it's been pretty full on to get to this point, but everything's sort of in place for us to really kind of build on that and just do more good work.
Awesome. What kind of advice would you give to the future generation of architects and interior designers coming in?
Yeah, I suppose one of the things that I would draw on from my own personal experience is that I think having a unique set of skills, so in my case I have accounting and financial skills, it has stood me in really good stead, and so I'd always encourage people to think about, what is it that you're adding on top of not just being an architect, but if you can develop other skills or build on that, that's incredibly attractive to an employer, and it just means it gives you, I guess, more strings to your bow in terms of, if there's sort of changes that kind of go on. I would say that, it's okay to take risks. Often, architects are very thoughtful and they like to analyse things, but sometimes you can overanalyse things. I think sometimes you just need to make a decision and stick to it, and if it turns out to be the wrong decision, nothing's permanent. You can always, you can always reframe it, or, if it doesn't work out. So I think that, it's really about making a decision and then putting everything into the direction that you've chosen. Is another thing that I would advocate, rather than worrying too much that, you're going to make the wrong decision, or that, it's not going to be the perfect thing for you at that time.
Final question. What's been your favourite project so far?
Oh, it's like asking who your favourite child is. I'm not sure you can do that.
Leave it at the
I'm
end.
not sure you can do it. Look, there's been so many, and we've obviously got a lot under construction at the moment. I would say one project that's very dear to our heart, and also speaks about the future as well, is that the very first education project in the primary school, secondary school space that we did was Pascoe Vale Primary School. We did a master plan for that school 3 years ago now. I think it was actually, it'll be 4 years, I think. We did stage 1, which has been finished and published and has won a few awards as well. We also were engaged to do stage 2, which is a new STEAM building that is under construction at the moment, and we've just been engaged to do the third and final stage of the master plan, which is a new gym. So effectively what it will mean is that we will have completed the entire campus, and it's just a great client, great site, and it's very special to us. But they're all important.
Yeah, definitely. No favourites at all.
No favourites, but that is one, as I said. That, it's a really rare privilege to be able to work on an entire campus.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it.